Hey people! Team U Seth here. The Steam winter sales have been rather bountiful for your local small-timer. And in fact, I've taken the opportunity to try out some older games which, in all honesty, I should have been condemned to many years of manual labor in the gulags for not owning prior till now. Instead, I shall pay off my dues by honoring my sword to you in vassalage. I will totally remain faithful and will not be trying to make off with one of your fiefdoms. Because today, I am finally taking a look at one of the finest games to ever grace my hard drive. Mount & Blade Warband. It's a game. An action, RPG, strategy game, to be exact. Not a lot of those going around recently, I'll tell you that. As a level 1 scrub, we are set forth into the war-torn lands of Calradia. Objective? Survive. No! Objective 2. Roll up to the same villages for the 10th time this week, being like, I am once again asking for your help. Other than that, however, what you get up to next is entirely up to you. You see, on top of being an RPG, action, and strategy game, Warband is also a sandbox. If you can think of something you want to do within a medieval setting, you probably can. Want to become a wandering merchant, traveling from town to town buying low and selling high? There is most certainly a place for you here, my friend. Perhaps it is banditry that you seek, putting together a little band of absolute knuckleheads to play pranks on the locals. You know, harmless stuff like raising villages, collecting all of their valuables, and selling them off to the nearest trader. Or maybe it is the lavish life of a nobleman that you're after, pledging your honor to one of the 6 warring kingdoms which inhabit this wretched sty, in an effort to unite its inhabitants under one superior banner. Lord. Hell, if you're feeling particularly cheeky, splitting off from your ruler, forming your own kingdom and reaping the benefits. Like the taxes, the prestige, the ladies. Well, if that sounds good to you, then let's be honest, you've already got a few hundred hours clocked in by this point. Nonetheless, this is my latest obsession. So, here's a fucking video, I don't know. Like most great games of its type, Warband is a very customizable experience. This starts with being able to choose between different game mechanics, like how difficult you wish for the combat to be, or how tough of a challenge you want from the enemy AI. We'll talk about that soon. This is an RPG, after all, and how you decide to build your character can add some more natural difficulty to your early game experience. If you want to have a slightly easier time, you can set your character's background to give yourself a bit of a head start in life by becoming an impoverished noble. This allows you to pick your own banner from the very beginning, making starting your own faction a lot easier. And your status as a purebred savage will grant you with enough legitimacy to be able to become a vassal of any kingdom you wish a little sooner. If that is indeed the cucked life you wish to lead. Whereas if you would rather work your way up to this honorable lifestyle, slowly grinding your renown until you may finally be recognized for your fighting prowess, then pick literally any other background. Each of these provides some starting points to specific skills, so you should have some sort of build in mind going in, and God forbid if you decide to play as a woman. We are in the Middle Ages after all, so be mindful of the fact that some people may not take you very seriously when you suddenly roll into their castle demanding rights. No. Well, that's the idea, but in my female playthrough, the only thing I found that was different was some slight flavor text changes. It honestly doesn't make that much of a difference. Look, I'm not trying to go full chud and say that I'm desperate for some good old-fashioned misogyny in my games, but if there ever was a place to do it, it's the medieval RPG.
Holy Jesus. What is that? What the fuck is that?
Just look at these bunions.
Before being let loose on the monstrosity generator, we first make a small stop at the skills screen. Now, in my short time playing Mount & Blade Warband, I have managed to come up with a sort of personal meta. This came about from wanting to achieve 2 goals as quickly as possible. upping my maximum warband size to make later conquests a little easier, and getting filthy, stinking rich. The sooner the better. For that reason, I like to spend a lot of points on charisma in the attributes panel up to at least the next multiple of 3. You see, all of your skills are governed by your attributes. For example, leadership, which allows you to recruit more units at any given time, is tied to your charisma level. And the maximum amount of skill points I can spend on leadership is limited to 1/3 of its governing attribute, minus the remainder. With a charisma level of 8, I'm only allowed to have a maximum leadership level of 2, but if I add an extra level, I'll be allowed to put a 3rd point into leadership. That helps with my first goal, leaving me with skills like trade and inventory management to help out with my short-term dinar shortage. That will most likely leave you with some extra points left to spend on some weapon-specific skills, depending on what you intend to specialize in. Which, speaking of, proficiencies. And with proficiencies, polearms. Polearms all the way. I cannot really do justice as to just how fucking overpowered polearms are in this game. Really, you can just look at this footage of me 1-digging these fools with barely any effort, and that should be more than enough. In all fairness, I am playing on the game's default difficulty setting, one of which cuts the enemy hit points down to just 1/4 of their normal amount. If you don't like the idea of being a complete god, then definitely turn this setting up a notch or 2. A big reason for polearm superiority is that the game always starts your character off with a horse, which is a massive force multiplier in combat. Their long reach, plus the speed bonus applied to the damage you deal when riding at full speed, makes it so that even basic polearms you might find from looting early on will become so good at mowing most of your enemies down in one hit that it might just carry you through to the end of your playthrough. Other than that, archery or crossbows. Each comes with pros and cons, so pick your poison. One final choice we need to make as the Nerevarine Outlander is which kingdom of 𝑬𝑿𝑷𝑬𝑹𝑰𝑬𝑵 we want to materialize into. This choice doesn't really matter all that much as you don't get any special rights wherever you choose to begin, and you can freely travel across the entire map at your own leisure from the start. But from personal experience, starting the game in either the Kingdom of the Nords or 𝑬𝑿𝑔𝑒ars makes the inevitable grinding that will need to take place a little bit easier. We will see why that is in just a little bit. And the different kingdoms do have some important differences we will need to keep in mind once we start to build up our little ragtag group in just a few moments. Upon spawning in the capital of our choosing, we are immediately assaulted. I mean, what did I expect after setting my starting location as East LA? Well, that might be a mod, actually. After swiftly showing him who runs this shit, we see another shady-looking character darting straight in our direction. We ready ourselves for another display of what a proper spanking looks like, until we realize that he was merely impressed by our flailing, and wants to hire us for help. We get our first quest here to help this trader find his kidnapped brother, which we can skip if we want to. You'll get the same quest no matter where you decide to begin your run, and there's really no reason not to get it done. There's a few dinars in it for us to sweeten the deal, and it's going to force us to hire a few goons as a condition. Something we'll have to do sooner or later anyway, so might as well get paid for it. Recruitment began almost immediately, though not before my first character ran into a small band of thieves by himself, was defeated, and taken prisoner. Yeah, Hub the Wise had it pretty rough throughout his short run in 𝑬𝑿𝑷𝑬𝑹. About an hour and a half in, when I finally started to get a feel for the game, I decided to Alt-Tab without saving.
Big mistake, mummy.
Save your game often, guys. You only need to hire 5 men in order to proceed with the next stage of this quest, though obviously there is strength to be found in numbers. There are actually quite a few things you need to keep in mind when filling out your ranks, but the most basic of these are the following. Your men will demand food, as well as a healthy weekly wage depending on their rank. Unless you start to earn a passive income by owning land, this will be something that requires your constant attention, especially the food situation. Having over 100 mouths to feed can really wear out your coin purse. With 10 to 20 men, however, this is more than manageable. The battle grinding we are going to partake in as soon as this quest is over and done with will reward us with some cheap loot to sell, which should be adequate to at least keep us going. I do have a preferred way to make a quick buck, but that won't come until later. To cut it short, reporting back to the merchant with our troops, he tells us that the bandits we are after like to hang out right outside of the capital city. A smart decision, I'm sure, especially since they hang out in groups of 4. Defeat them and we'll find out where they keep their prisoners. Report back to the merchant again with the info, and we'll finally be able to raid the bandits' lair, grab the bachelor in distress, head back to the tavern, have a cup of tea and wait for all this to blow over. Another short quest section involving stirring some shit up in the city, and finally, we are out on our own, ready to do as we please as a free man. The world of 𝑬𝑿𝑷𝑬𝑹𝑰𝑬𝑵 is now our oyster, with ample opportunities to make gold and renown alike. I really can't remember the last time I've played a game that basically just shits you out into its world with zero direction like Warband does. I've been playing quite a lot of Morrowind recently, and even in that game you at least have the objective of going to Balmora to meet with Caius the old hunk. Whereas here, we're just left to decide what our own goals are right from the very beginning. And it's glorious. Of course, we have some rather grand ambitions. Ones that will require an army of veterans to fulfill. But the couple of levels you will most likely manage to scrape up in the opening quest will not be enough to go off and start to conquer cities. Oh no. Here is where we get into the grinding. There are a couple of avenues we can go down to start earning some experience points, though they all fundamentally involve doing the same thing. The only way to earn experience points is by bonking and stabbing your way through the people of 𝑬𝑿𝑷𝑬𝑹. Impoverished noble characters will have an easier time persuading the local authorities that you are, in fact, worthy enough to offer them help, through, you know, being a purebred stallion and all that. But even they will first have to prove themselves by fighting the enemies of whichever kingdom they wish to join first. Once a vassal, they can then call upon you to help in future campaigns, which will result in battles you can partake in and hence experience. And that's, I guess, one way you can go if you decide to roleplay as a cuckold. No. You want to farm barbarians for 57 days until you reach level 19. That is the life that Hub the fucking fucked, later renamed to Hub the Conqueror, chose to lead. It's genius, really. You'll wander the vast Vaegir's tundra with occasional trips to the coast, cementing your fame as a honorable peacekeeper, slaying bandits and raiders alike to keep the local population safe. Oh, you'll make a surprisingly decent living doing this too, collecting just enough loot and scraps to be able to pay your men and keep them fed, with the occasional equipment upgrade to boot. You might even get a call to vassalage from a local authority in recognition of your good deeds. Maybe you might even be so lucky as to get close to one of their maidens by asking them about whatever women talk about these days. Queso?
What?
Or being demure? Well, I know a little bit of French myself, lady. Bred in French is what I'll be if thou does not accept me as thy champion.
It worked! It fucking worked! I can't believe this shit!
Little did they know, however, that the game was rigged from the start. You see, I've only become stronger. The handful of men I've raised practically went from suckling upon their mother's teats to being hardened, battle-ready veterans. Where peasants once stood behind me, now knights, sharpshooters, men-at-arms. You know, I will accept my vassalage to King 𝑬𝑿𝑷𝑬𝑹. But let's just say, I'll be doing so on a short-term basis. Okay, I think we missed some steps here. First things first, we're gonna need a few men. I did notice something quite interesting as I've come to decide on my barbarian slaying meta. If you run around the map with too many men in your warband, barbarians and raiders will just start to avoid you, running away as soon as you get close, and unless you've sunk a lot of points into pathfinding, you're going to have a hard time catching up with them. For that reason, I have found that the sweet spot for the amount of men you should have if you intend to grind like this is 15, maybe 18, somewhere around there. You might find that at first you will lose quite a lot of your recruits, but this won't be the case for very long. Having the player character always start with a horse gives you a massive advantage for one, and investing some points into the surgery skill might save some of your men from the brink of death, bringing them back to fight another day. But even after just the first battle, your units will most likely earn enough experience to level them up from their trash tier recruit status. Because the key to winning battles, especially later on, isn't just with the sheer number of people you bring into a fight. It took me about 4 characters and an embarrassing amount of time to figure out just how important promoting your units is in this game. Level up a Swadian recruit to a knight unit, and he will do the work of 20 of these scrubs if you use him right. Which, speaking of, hiring recruits is as easy as walking into a village and seeing who will be dumb enough to fall for your scam. 10 dinars per person is the standard hiring rate, and the amount of men you can get from a single village depends on your relation to said village. At the start of the game, you'll get anything between 0 and 8 recruits. Repeat this step, visiting village after village. And soon enough you'll have as many illiterate recruits as your heart desires. Want some more hardened operators? Go into a tavern found in every major city and see if anyone is looking for a job. You will often find mercenaries hanging around there looking for a master. Though you better make sure you have some hefty coffers if you decide to go that route. Wrangling peasants and leveling them up is more often the better long-term decision. But as I mentioned earlier, there is a great deal more to recruiting than first meets the eye. I've already mentioned the upkeep costs, both with wages and food. But what if I told you that the different kingdoms of Calradia all have different martial specializations? Sure, you could hire absolutely anything that moves and maybe get somewhat ahead in life. But knowing what your units are going to be good at when fully promoted, and hiring accordingly, is really going to pay off. Thus, here's my largely unexperienced rundown of the best each of these kingdoms have to offer. Let's start off quite simply with the Nords. If you need good melee fighters, hire these fuckers. That is the one thing they do, and by God, do they do it well. The Nord Huskarls are axe-wielding maniacs with a high athletics skill, making them both quick and deadly on any battlefield. They also have good armor, including a shield, making them decently resistant against missile attacks. Their archery units are okay, but the thing about the Nords that sets them apart from all other factions is the fact that they don't field any cavalry. For that, you'll have to look elsewhere. Like the Kingdom of Swadia, whose Swadian Knight cavalry units outshine any other part-time jockeys across Calradia. These are top tier for the simple reason that they just refuse to fucking die, thanks to being heavily armored. Which is especially important for cavalry in this game, as they really love to get stuck completely surrounded in melee unless you baby them around the battlefield. Their lances deal a massive amount of damage, making them a crucial part in any army worth its salt. The Swadian Sergeant is a decent, if slow, option for melee in a pinch, though they do lack in the archery department, only really besting mercenary crossbowmen. The title for the best archers in Warband seems to be somewhat of a debated topic, though in the end it's usually a toss-up between the 𝑬𝑿𝑷𝑬𝑹𝑰𝑬𝑵 or Rodog sharpshooters. I have to give a shout out to the former faction real quick because my first successful playthrough, where I actually managed to capture a couple of cities for myself for the first time, I had an army mostly consisting of 𝑬𝑿𝑔𝑒ar troops, many marksmen included. Archers have a much higher rate of fire, though crossbows deal more damage per hit. Really, whichever sounds better to you, that's what you should go for. Though when it comes to defending castles from sieges, crossbows are definitely the better way to go. The Khergit Khanate gets dibs as the only faction in the game to have a high-tier horse-mounted archer unit, so if you're in the market for that, you know where to go. Those are what I believe to be the widely accepted picks for each of these unit types, though that's not to say that each of these categories doesn't have close runner-ups, or that you can't make anything else work. Having top tier units from any faction is going to vastly improve your odds against most armies you come across, not to even mention the odd group of raiders that actually feel like trying their luck on your band of bloodthirsty veterans. It can happen if you leave them unchecked for too long. This is mostly just advice for min-maxing, and if you play this game for the first time, it's a part of the game that is nice to know in advance, but that you don't really need to pay much attention to in order to be successful. So now we know who we want to hire and how to hire them. I usually like to go half and half with 𝑬𝑿𝑔𝑒ars and Norse to begin with so I can start to build up some elite melee and ranged units. Now we need to get them some fighting experience, which shouldn't be too hard. The reason for why I like to start the game in the kingdoms of either the Nords or Vaegirs is that it's quite easy to find parties of barbarians and raiders there. There's a patch of forest just above Kudan where a bandit's lair often spawns, as well as a sea raider's lair north of that at the coast, which, as far as I can tell, always spawns at that exact same location. You'll probably want to start with farming lower level enemies like looters, progressing to the more experienced raiders once you've leveled up your units a little bit. Sea raiders will put up more of a challenge at the trade-off of awarding more experience points per kill, as well as often dropping far more valuable loot. You can get some very decent armor from these fights, so not only are you gaining levels and making money from fighting them, you'll get some good upgrades as well. But there is another way. One that involves some rather immoral actions. If you start to get bored by the barb grinding, and/or you wish to make a lot more money on the Swift, we can move on to Phase 2. Simply, pick a kingdom, one that you don't particularly like the look of. Preferably, they will be weakened, possibly embroiled in a war that they are in the process of losing. But that's not entirely necessary. What is important is that you're okay with not being able to recruit any units from their faction anytime soon, as you're not going to be in particularly good terms with them for a while. The Sarenids and Khanate are up there on the list for that reason. Anything their units do, most other factions do much better. Once our victims have been selected, we will simply attack one of their roaming groups of peasants on their transit between villages. This will possibly be the easiest fight you will have all game, and it will officially make you an enemy of whichever kingdom these peasants hailed from. And now, as official enemies of the state, we can raid their villages. Pillaging and razing villages is, for lack of a better term, absolutely and utterly fucked. Once you reach a certain threshold of troops under your command, you can simply roll into a village and raid it uncontested by its citizens. Any enemy patrols in the area might try and stop you, but we'll get back to that in a moment.
Stop!
However, if you are still going around with those same 15 to 18 guys, you will have to defeat the local peasants before you can reap their spoils. Peasants in villages like this are actually a decent way to farm. They provide a measly 88 experience points for killing them, which is less than most of the barbarians you would have faced up against up to this point. But there are a lot of them. Upwards of 50 in fact. And they are complete trash tier at fighting, with no armor to speak of. If your units are even slightly leveled, they should have absolutely no problem with dealing with the threat, yielding some easy experience points in the process. And even if you do manage to lose a couple of guys here and there, peasants tend to wield blunt weapons, which never kill but instead knock units unconscious. So after you clear a village and collect the valuable loot, the guys you lost by getting starched with a club will be back and ready to fight again in a day or two. Successfully raiding just a single village will leave us at the other end with not only some potential promotions to hand out, but more importantly, 5,000 to 6,000 dinars worth of valuable goods that we can fuck off to the nearest friendly traders. Repeat this until you reach a point where money is no longer an issue. Of course, this is high-risk business. If you're caught by a nearby army, they will more than likely come over with 100 men to try and take you prisoner. But the rewards are, quite frankly, worth the risk. And if the dozen troops you have are high enough level, you could honestly have a pretty decent chance of fighting them off due to how much of a clusterfuck village battles can be. We'll get to that, don't you worry. And I'm sure that all of this raiding isn't going to have any sort of unforeseen consequences later that will have to be addressed. Because that basically concludes my two-step plan of grinding in Warband, giving us a small but hardened group of veterans, and all of the money we could possibly need to further expand it. From here on out, I slowly start to hire more units, training them up in a similar manner as before, dropping extra points into leadership and potentially trainer and pathfinding to make leveling them up a little easier. Before I know it, I have over 100 men under my command, around half of which are fully leveled. With an army of this size, I can basically do whatever I want. So, I think now is finally a good time to talk a little bit about the combat in Mount & Blade Warband. You know, only one of the more important aspects of the game that I haven't even really touched upon yet. Combat in Mount & Blade is, well, there's a lot of levels to it. Mechanically, it's kind of scuffed, but like, in a fun and endearing way. It only took one multiplayer match to see how busted it can be in that context. There are better multiplayer-focused medieval combat games out there. I made a video about one of them a while ago, in fact. However, it does work very well as an RPG combat system. What I mean by that is that it is really good at demonstrating your character's progression as they gain experience through the countless battles you put them through. The more you stick to a specific weapon type, the more proficient your character becomes at using them. Dealing damage and getting kills will, in itself, award some proficiency points to that weapon type over time during battles. And leveling up will also grant you with 10 more points per level that you can distribute however you please. Perhaps the most obvious place you can see this progression is in the ranged weapons. That crosshair is barely even a suggestion as to where your arrows are going to go when you first get started with a character. Hitting an enemy anywhere on their body from more than 20 meters away at this point is not a guarantee. Compare this to a leveled character who has become proficient with their weapon, downright being able to hit the same grain of sand across the map if he just aims at the same pixel on the screen. It's a little harder to see this progression with melee weapons, but it does still make a difference that you can feel while playing. It's just that, instead of being more accurate or maybe being more nimble with your chosen weapon type, it's instead a damage increase. You can get to a point where certain tiers of enemies just fall in front of you from a single swing from a saber. I definitely noticed this with polearms throughout my playtime. Some of my older characters were able to destroy a lot of the low to medium tier enemies without even needing to catch the lance after a certain point, just with regular attacks at high speed. Not to mention that this feeling of progression also extends to the men under your command, but I'll talk about that in a minute. Now, the vast majority of my playthroughs were played at the default AI difficulty which the game starts you off with, that being very easy, on both damage dealt to player and friendly units. I can't deny that running all of my enemies down with ease was a lot of fun, but it can become stale when you find a cheesy playstyle and realize just how much power the player character has in affecting the results of a battle. My cheesy playstyle being riding around on horseback and picking people off from behind while the rest of my troops take the brunt of the attack. This is unfortunately a necessary evil that I found myself falling into over and over again, even as I've come to upping the difficulty level. It's kind of like the dreaded sneak archer build in Skyrim. It just works. This is because the vast majority of character experience gained in battle comes from killing enemies, with some very minor trickles coming from your other men. The more kills you get yourself, the faster you will level. I actually tried to play the game with a character that I intended on not doing any damage with, acting as more of a commander for my troops. And that leveling was slow. It would be quite cool to see that as an actual viable playstyle. Imagine if you could choose to forego the combat-oriented skills to put the points into some other useful ones instead, making a character who is a gifted leader but just isn't very good at the whole fighting thing. That sort of build isn't really possible in the game as is, which is unfortunate. Leveling would have to be divided up into two categories for something like this to be viable. Something like a combat level and a separate leader level. You could get combat experience from actually fighting, but maybe winning battles and a share of experience gained by your men could go towards your level as a leader. That's just one random idea, but the general feeling I have is that I would be very interested to see the series open up to some slightly expanded role-playing options as far as character creation goes. As things are now, I could choose to duke it out in the clusterfuck amongst my men, and maybe get a couple of kills if the opportunity arises amidst the endless swings coming from every direction. Or I could just go the more effective route for leveling that nets me the most kills and helps to thin the herd for my men. That's not to say that combat is a breeze even at this difficulty level. There are actually quite a few things for you to consider. Certain units and weapons do have strengths and weaknesses that you can account for to stand a better chance at defeating them. For example, dealing damage to horses with polearms stops them dead in their tracks, making them a great counter against the annoying cavalry charges that the Canids and Saronids are quite fond of utilizing. Their downside is that their long reach means that they become pretty much useless if an enemy gets in too close for a hug. Two-handed axe users can often bypass shield blocks if they perform overhead attacks, but if they're doing that, they obviously aren't shielding themselves from incoming missile attacks. You can also still be knocked out fairly easily if you're not careful, especially if you catch a couch shot to the face. But at the end of the day, foot combat is kind of just too much of a clusterfuck to make me ever really want to partake in it myself. I'd rather just let my men do it. Because player involvement in combat is only half of the story, if even that. Commanding your army in battle is, for me, the best part of Warband. It is immensely satisfying to see your small group of men go from hirelings that barely stand a solid chance against a band of forest bandits, to a true warband of veterans capable of defeating the armies of kings against all odds. You can really start to form a sort of bond with your troops as you watch them level up, some of them managing to survive all the way from when you first set foot in Calradia. It's the sort of thing that so many other games try to evoke, but more often than not fail, especially when it comes to RPGs. It's truly something that I've missed out on by only trying this game out recently, and really, I can't think of any other game series that provide this sort of experience, especially to this scale. The maximum amount of units you can have in a single battle is capped by the game to 150, which might not seem like a lot. But again, the only types of games that actually exceed this amount of units on the screen on a regular basis tend to only really be dedicated real-time strategy games, not action RPGs that let you join in first or third person. You can also modify the game to exceed the 150 unit cap, which I actually haven't tried to do yet. I have a really good CPU, so it would probably be no problem, but I have seen posts online saying that the AI can start to act up if you do this. The normal cap is big enough to provide a hectic battle experience as is, with the only downside being how the game handles battles when the armies involved exceed that cap. Say you have 75 men, and your enemy attacks you with 225. First of all, you fucked up. Second, because of the 150 unit capacity, the game has to have a reinforcement system for when that capacity is exceeded. Once enough men on the enemy team die, a new group spawns back in their starting area. And you know, I can accept that. However, to balance the difference in the total units each army brought into battle, the amount of men you start with in this situation is reduced. They are reinforced if you lose them, but as far as I can tell, you don't have any say in what the men you start with will consist of. I guess this technically ends up being fair, but I can't lie and say that it doesn't feel like you're getting a little bit cheated, even though the numbers do line up. So we join a battle, and the first thing that happens is that all of our men just start to charge in the general direction of the enemy. Well, that's not gonna work. Warband has a number of different command menus accessible with the F keys on the keyboard, which give you more than enough utility to effectively order your units around the battlefield, including stuff like being able to stop your archers from firing until you give the command to preserve their arrows. I very quickly developed the habit of double blasting F1 as soon as I loaded in to order them to hold position, just so that my cavalry doesn't run off and get murked before we even get properly started. You can also select between commanding specific unit types with the number keys, and are even able to customize the groups yourself if you really want to get down to the specifics of how your army works. By default, Group 1 is infantry, 2 is archers, and 3 is cavalry, which is the only group that I actually go out of my way to control on their own. When it comes to actually moving your troops across the battlefield, there are really only a couple of options. You either tell them to follow you, charge, or you command them to hold position, which tells them to go exactly where the player character is at the time of the command. Think of your character as the cursor in an RTS game in that moment, except you have to do the hard work of actually getting to that position first. This works well enough once you get used to it, though it is a very old school way of doing things, especially when it comes to having to dick around with buttons on your keyboard to get specific orders out. That's why I generally try to avoid doing a lot of micromanagement and just stick to giving very simple commands to all of my units at the same time. Like, try and tell your archers to hold fire while also taking 10 paces back, then also tell your infantry to charge and the cavalry to follow you, all while arrows fly inches away from your head. It's not a very intuitive system for giving complex commands quickly, and from what I can tell, it's one of the few things that Bannerlord 2 actually improved upon in a fairly major way. Seems like in that game you can also just look at a point on the map and tell your units to go there, which is just... Couple that with the RTS camera mod and it's actually starting to look like everything I'm asking for. Fuck. I'm gonna have to play Bannerlord 2, aren't I? The good news is that once your units are going, they are going. Once they get that look in their eyes and all they can think about is all of the butter they're going to eat later after they're done killing, their AI really just gets the job done. It's outside of that where I've encountered a couple of minor peculiarities, like how if you order all of your men to hold position, cavalry in their ranks will just have their ass turned to the enemy for no good reason whatsoever. Sometimes they also think that they're stuck when they're too close to friendly units like this and decide to dismount, which can get slightly annoying. Battles in these open fields work really well. They provide more than enough room to support the unit capacity, giving you ample space to move them around to different strategic points. However, Warband uses procedural generation for all of its battlefields, basing it off of the rough terrain where the fight takes place on the overworld map. Even in the more open areas, you might still get the occasional instance of spawning directly into a tree or a rock, though this only happens to me maybe 2 or 3 times total in the over 70 hours I have clocked in. Get into a brawl in a mountainous region, however, spawning on a near 90-degree incline was pretty funny for the first maybe half a dozen times it happened, but later it just became kind of annoying. Your movement speed is significantly reduced when traversing up and down hills, so height advantage is actually something you can take into account when positioning your units. But it also means that these sort of mountain spawns are just a pain in the ass to get out of. But the worst of these, as I've alluded to at the end of the last section, are village battles. So in all of my games so far, I've decided to take the shortest route to forming my own kingdom. Once I've built up enough wealth and a large army of leveled troops, I just walk up to an enemy castle or city, wreck everyone inside, and declare myself ruler of the Kingdom of Hub. Big mistake. Castle sieges are their own scuffed can of worms, just because you only have one point of entry up a ladder. They're fucking ridiculous. You see, it really helps to establish yourself as a legitimate ruler before you start to go off declaring independence. There are a lot of ways to do this, like getting married, having a high honor rating, as well as having good relationships with a lot of different nobles. But it does take a while to accomplish, meaning that the proper way to become king in Warband does, unfortunately, make you have to dabble in at least a little bit of cuckoldry. It's quite sad, really. If you decide to take over a castle or a city, forming your own illegitimate kingdom, the other kingdoms in Calradia won't take too kindly to that. Within the first couple of weeks of forming his own kingdom, Hub the Conqueror faced war declaration after war declaration in quick succession, on account of what the other kings on the continent saw as his illegitimate rule. Cue endless warbands of all allegiances zeroing in on my villages to raid them over and over and over and over again. And you'll want to fight off every single one of these yourself, since, as is the case with a lot of strategy games like the Total War series, you will do a far better job at defeating them with minimal losses than the auto-resolve ever could. So this was the game for me now from this point forward. A settlement needs our help, roll up to it, village battle ensues. I have a lot of footage of village fights saved on my hard drive because of this. They were by far some of the easiest fights I've ever had in my whole time with this game, because the enemy AI doesn't really know how to handle them effectively. Apart from bandits, who pretty much always just charge for the player in every encounter, large armies commanded by nobles actually tend to move around open battlefields in formation. Only once they get close enough do they actually charge you, which can be quite effective if you weren't able to soften them up with your archers or a sneaky cavalry charge from the side or rear. Nothing like this happens in village battles, opting instead for the tried and true tactic of Rush B. So they just funnel towards you in a narrow file because of all the buildings that are in the way, making them very vulnerable to, well, basically anything. Just tell your men to hold position and watch the results. The only real difficulty I've come across in village battles at this stage of the game wasn't even intentional, because if there are enough units on the opposite team, some of them will inevitably spawn directly into a building. You might get lucky and catch enough of a glimpse of a body part sticking out of the wall to be able to shoot them with a bow, but there have been occasions where I've just had to retreat and re-engage. But in the grand scheme of things, these are relatively small problems, some of which I cursed upon myself through sheer laziness. Let's not forget that the original Mountain Blade was Taleworld's first game they ever released, with Warband being a standalone expansion aiming to expand on that foundation. This small indie studio from Turkey of all places just came out of nowhere one day and decided to release a certified Hood classic. And so the odd problem I might have here and there really doesn't change my opinion about the overall experience. Because one thing is for sure about Warband, and really this series as a whole: there's really nothing else like it. But before I bid you farewell, there is one more aspect to this game that I, at the very least, need to briefly touch on. Let's just say, Hypothetically speaking, you buy Warband, play it for a month straight, and exhaust it of all of its content. Well, it's time to go and play another game, right? Mods. Download some mods.
What the fuck is this?
With workshop support, downloading some mods for Warband is as easy as clicking one button, and there are a lot to choose from. They start off small, like the Diplomacy mod, which adds extra options for, well, diplomacy, leaving the rest of the game largely as is. And then there are the total conversions. We have two flavors of these, starting with some very ambitious ones. Like the Last Days of the Third Age, a Tolkien-based mod putting you into the world of the Lord of the Rings. There is also a Star Wars total conversion, which works way better than you might imagine. But if you've seen this channel before, you might know that I'm a fan of the Cossacks games. So of course, I had to give a try. You do need the Napoleonic Wars DLC to be able to play this, which is a requirement for a lot of other mods for that matter, but I think the price is well worth it to be able to play this for how polished it feels. Especially since Napoleonic Wars doesn't come with any single player capability. But then, we get to the other type of total conversions. Like any other game with an active modding scene, the Mount & Blade series has seen its fair share of beautiful shitpost mods. In the spoiler chat on my Discord channel, link in the description by the way, there was one specific mod that was brought to my attention almost immediately. That being Gangs of Glasgow. It looked like absolutely the sort of thing I was looking for. Only problem being that this mod was made for the original Mount & Blade. However, do not fear, because in 2022, some absolute saint decided to port this beauty of a mod into Warband, and uploaded it to ModDB. It is everything I expected it to be.
Oh shit.
Oh, here we go again.
Yeah, I recognize that. That's fucking Glasgow there.
You have encountered big Neds. You have one lads fit for battle against their 8 piece of pish, mate. Yeah, get into it.
Alright, the bush. Oh shit. They're fucking kid out. Nedsman.
Fuck up. Battle's lost, you are shite. You're enemy sticky prisoner. Taken prisoner by fucking big Neds. After painful days of being happy slapped for camera phone vids that will be all over the net, you find a chance to escape from your captors. Cool. Fuck do you want? What can you tell me about this place? How's life? What's going on these days? Freddie Mercury was a gay apparently. What? Alright, fuck this place. I need to go to a settlement. Wait, Charlie's Garage, is that good? What the fuck is that?
Shit.
Approach these streets.
43 dinars.
What the fuck is this?
You just got paid.
Oh.
You just got fucking dollar.
Oh. Wait,
It's like in your fucking benefits.
has to be. Oh wait, it's all here. What the fuck? Walther P99. Yeah, okay. I can just buy that shit. I need like ammo though. Projectiles. Goose Lorry 27. Strasbourg Police. Not gonna mess with the Polish just yet.
Come ahead, my client.
Alright, there's the fucking big Neds.
There's a fucking piece of that. Oh shit.
That's a fucking...
Oh, there. Oh.
Alright, reload. Charge them.
Fuck.
Charge them, boys.
Oh.
Who'd have thought? Fucking come out with a piece.
Busted. Alright.
Just like that. Order your boys to attack without you. Tell them you've got a bad back. Oh, Glasgow.
Your boys got fucked up. Oh my god.
Fucking bastard.
Oh. My goodness.
Well, it shot right up your ass.
Oh.
Chunky.
Oh. It's about time you found one of these.
Oh.
Oh shit. Oh shit.
Coke. Bar of hash.
Oh my goodness.
Bag of smack. Fuck fast.
Bro, That's actually spawn.
I wanted orange. It gave me lemon.
Oh shit.
I will drink from your skull.
What the fuck?
Some fucking swat that.
If they have guns, actually, I'm fucked. But... Oh! They've got like ARs!
A what? Holy shit, yeah.
I just
Pump him.
fucking charge them.
Oh no. Holy fuck.
Fucking... Oh my god.
Oh. Fucking injured with that piece. Ah. Oh my god.
What are you guys fucking doing? Go get him. Workman or apprentice joiner? Yeah, I'll get some joiners.
That's just so fucking spawn, like, everything going nuts. You'd get one of those fucking ARs, like.
Absolutely.
Oh.
One guy wounded, fucking... Oh!
Holy shit.
It's a fucking AK.
Oh my god, yeah. It's like a fucking AK or something.
No, stay back. Oh my god.
Oh shit.
I'm too fast. Oh, shit.
Oh my god.
Oh!
Oh my god.
This fucking accuracy, what the fuck?
Holy shit. Wow.
Oh, you bastard.
Okay. Game's won, GG.
Yeah, that's it. It's over. I think I need a fucking army now. Oh my goodness. Wow.
Oh, they managed to win 3 of us, what the fuck? Okay.
I thought the smell of piss was coming from this direction.
No. I'd gain if I was you, unless you want your balls burst. Okay. Your ma's a les, your dad's a poof, and they weren't your parents anyway. Still no talking. Will you lead my gang, Kenny?
Alright.
Call it a fucking gang. Suppose I'll help you wee lassies out though. Thank you, Kenny. Give me 200 pence or get to fuck. Alright. Force the barman to give you free food and drink. Chop the local guys' wives and girlfriends. Yeah, fuck it. As the party member with the fewest facial scars, 3, you reckon that you can steal as many as 8 guys' birds. Go on. Fuck it. Your persistent harassment drives away 5 fit birds from the pub's lounge.
Love the carpenter, the bucket,
Aye.
and I pure love the Bobby man.
The fuck?
You encounter a bunch of lassies out on the lash. Follow the lassies in hopes of getting a ride. Tell the lassies to wait up a minute. Shag some of your birds. 5. Fresh beef. As the party member with the highest boost tolerance, 0, you estimate that it will take 9 hours for you to get drunk enough to fight at your best.
Oh shit.
This fucking rifle's game breaking, dude. It's so fucked.
It really was fucked. 10 out of 10. Worth getting the game just to play this fucking shit.
And it easily earns the badass seal of approval.
I want you to subscribe to me
Scav Merchant Hub.
on YouTube. Thank you, cringe. Fuck.